Kilo, and how he transformed some women that were gathering into the 7 hills.
Oh my goodness, no, that's gotta be you.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. So last night I was thinking about my mentors, and so this morning I'd like to, I think about Glory Webster Cranmer, and I think about my grandmother and all of that, all of the great language warriors that are women predominantly, and our educators predominantly. I think about old man George Hunt and Franz Boas and their contribution to my knowledge. So some of you may be familiar with the geographical maps that old man George Hunt and Boas made and published in 1895. And map 6A shows the Bay of Chafis right here, and it's got about 120 geographical place names on it. And through this really organic, beautiful progress of having those old words translated into a contemporary Umista font and writing system was so beautiful, and Auntie Wata and many people, Julia Jacobson and many others, Bruce Wamas. We would just, on some of the harder ones that were more difficult for them to decipher, they used the English translation in conjunction with a contemporary understanding of the language, and they would morph it together with that older written system. And we learned that George Hunt had changed his writing system, and Franz Boas had changed his writing system many times as he picked up more and more subtleties in the indigenous languages. The morphology of those geographical place names and the way that they are built were built so that as I described this area by its geographical localities, you would get a sense of what it looks like, even if you had not been here. And so the narrative that is in this publication, Kwakwaka'wakw Settlements, which many of you will be familiar with. This book was gifted to me in 1994 by Auntie Glow. And so it says, Xmas 94. Merry Christmas. I'd just like to start by reading Auntie Glow's introduction. And it's not long, but it's powerful. And I think I'll start there, if I could. She's presently in the hospital here in Port Hardy, and she's done lots of work for us over her time with the inspiration and the building of the Umista and with the Popular Learning Series. So her introductory statement says, the Kwakiutl are one of the most described and hence most widely known ethnic groups in the world. Yet increasingly people write about us and apparently think about us in the past tense. We are told that Kwakiutl ritual, art, technology, and religion were colorful and complex. It is as if our culture were gone. But we Kwakwaka'wakw are very much alive, and we abide in our traditional lands. Our culture retains many aspects of the old ways because research has led to understanding as well as to knowledge. We feel it is important at the outset to provide readers with our own perspective on our lands. Glory Webster Cranmer, Beikhadzi, Beikhadzi. Forgive my kwakala. Yeah. So she's my mentor. This is a great publication, and I always find myself referring to it So in that publication, there's a narrative by Auntie Nunu, Helen Knox, Nee Wilson, and she lived over here. She was born and raised here. And so there's a Kwakwala verbatim transcript, and it's transliterated into English. And I'm not sure if when Auntie Nunu would learn to read, but my grandmother, who had the gift of being able to read, would read to her when the mission boat would come in and bring comics into the community. Granny Emma would read to the rest of her friends and family the comic books. And that's just one memory one history that I recall. Yeah, so there's three folks in the community who are over 90 years of age in our community presently, and that's Julia Jacobson of the Martin family, and Uncle George Namugwis, and Uncle Hutch Sisacholas. And so we are so fortunate that they are gifted with long life. The commuter trail that leads from Tayagyu to Urukala, where Montagila had a magnificent house on the Gwadzi side. The ancestor from here and the ancestor from there are involved in the narrative that Auntie Nunu shares. So that the commuter trail, called the commuter trail, called the Spud Trail, got named by Namugwis recently, and it is called Edakilele Lachakayas. The idea that as a trail, as a kayas, you can just go a little ways and turn around and come back, or you can go to the lake and come back, or you can go all the way through and carry on, or you can come from the other side. So there's no real destination. And it's something that you can return and go back and forth on, is the way that body of language is built. Yeah, so I'll begin by sharing that Namugwis came down over there at Wiklawayas, sorry, that creek that comes out over there by Tlukwa, the bluff. And the creek is named that because it goes up in the back and splits and divides. It goes around the back of that mountain. The other leg comes up in back of the school. So Namugwis took off his sun mask and came down over there. He built a house and would live with Monakwala, his slave Tlutlawatsa, and his unnamed boy. They would live there, and he would walk this way, and he met a person with a small hooked nose, seen there, who was wearing a seagull mask. He said, "Thank you that we have met, friend. Who are you?" "I am Zinkayu," identified as the Wallace Quaguit. And he said, "Who is your neighbor to the south?" He said, "I do not know." So Namugwis came along here and met Lol Sindayu, also wearing a seagull mask. And said, "Thank you that we have met, my friend. Who lives at the river?" He carried on and he met Kwakwalanukume of the Gigilgum. He said, "I am Kwakwalanukume of Gigilgum." And on his return home, he's seen some sea otters and seals at Kamsakse, Shell Island. And so he returned home and he asked his unnamed boy to go to the island. Him and his brother Monakola pushed a log in, and his unnamed boy went to the island and harvested a whole bunch of seals, and on their log they floated back to their house, and he prepared a great feast, and he was very excited about his unnamed boy, who he would call Umatlatlai, and he would, to qualify his name, he came and he invited Zingayu, Losundayu, Matagila on the other side of the river in Kwakwalanukome, and he invited them to have a feast, and he took the breast of the seal and he presented it to Zingayu and said, "This will be your cut. This will be, you are the closest one to me, so we will be one people." Namugwis of the Pumoyoy Kwagyut and the Wallace Kwagyut would be one people. And he presented the feast in an orderly fashion, and he established with Wilson Dayu, Matagila, and Kwakwalanukome the order, the speaking order, and the way of presenting and distribution of things. And so the protocol that exists today is built here. It's built here by our ancestors, our collective ancestors. And so this particular location is incredibly powerful location for all of us. It is our location. It is a place where Auntie Nunu describes as central to our potlatch law and our potlatch orderly way of abiding on the territory, abiding on the land, abiding with each other in our relationship to the land and the animal kingdom. Yeah. So there's other versions to the story. There's other versions of this history in Social Organization of the Kwagyut, Secret Societies of the Kwagyut, 1895, and they're slightly changed a bit with the naming of that boy, and the boy grew quickly and became powerful with his hunting magic, and he would go on. One of the narratives, one of the histories that was collected speaks of Monakola going, the brother of Namugwis of the Kumoyoy, going over to the Gilk River on that crude canoe craft that they had made. And he entered the Gilk River and he bathed and brushed himself with hemlock. And he heard some adzing in the forest, heard some chopping in the forest. And as he approached the chopping in the forest, it got quieter and disappeared. And again, he bathed in the river and washed himself with hemlock. And this repeated itself 4 times. And the fourth time, as he came closer to the work, the builder was in the form of a grouse. And as he approached this beautiful little hunting canoe, the grouse disappeared. And in the canoe was a nettle line, a club, a spear, and a paddle. And all of these tools were incredibly potent. Monakola would take this beautiful craft, this beautiful canoe, and bring it home and present it as a gift to Umatalatai, who would continue his journey and meet Kawadilakala and marry Kawadilakala's daughter, and would be gifted with all of the gifts of the 40 wolves, Walasaka. They would build a house over there at Kapka, and which means logs crossways on the beach. And so these histories speak about our collective relationship. And yeah. So that's a story I wanted to share because of its importance to all of us. And as we go forward, it has to be our hope that we unite our fronts and identify ourselves. I do remember when we were presented by the opportunity to make some money to participate in resource extraction with the building of the Orca Sand and Gravel project. And it was completely weird to be standing there as Quagios beside Barb Cranmer, beside Cousin Barb, who's Numgees. And politically, we developed a different relationship, and we were spoken to differently. And it doesn't make sense because we're the same family. But beyond that bloodline, you know, historically we are connected. Beyond our bloodlines and our ancestry. So Tom made reference to the law that made Indigenous people stay here on the reserve, I mean. And so on that map that Paxtalas saved from the garbage dump, it shows the houses, and on that map you'll see references to your ancestors, all of our ancestors. And we came here, we had a relationship with each other. One of the great injustices in this beautiful country of ours is in 1914, when Oakstak Kilagilis was at the Royal Commission in, I believe, in Alert Bay, and he was representing the Quagios. But in 1914, that's when Edward Sheriff Curtis, was making the film over there. So you'll see pictures of Edward Sheriff Curtis and George Hunt, and they're surrounded by a whole crew of Indigenous people. Canoe people, fire keepers, construction workers, and that made the set, and totem carvers, and regalia makers, the cast of hundreds and hundreds of Indigenous people. And they at Oakstak Aguilis applied for Wazulis, but it was rejected because Edward Sheriff Curtis was standing there, and it was his. Just saying. It's very, very highly likely that Uncle George, Auntie Glo's oldest brother, was, when he was a child, they went over to Guadzi at the Guadzi River. We drive over the Indian village on the highway when we cross the river. It's very likely that when Emma married Tom and they had children, Tom and Odie's family and David's family and Tom Johnson's family, the Martin family, they would all go over, the Quagios would go over there, Charles Wilson's family would go over there, and we all had houses to procure food that they sustained themselves with. But it wasn't theirs. A couple of people got title to the estuary in 1911. It was registered to them under the Land Registry Act in Victoria. And so, isn't that something? It's so recent. So I guess, you know, our narrative for these young people, you know, our mentor is the land. Our mentors are the totem poles that speak. What do totem poles say? I don't think you're going to find a stronger advocate for environmental stewardship than a totem pole. Feel like that's all my relations.